This is the most important World Series of our lifetime, so let's talk about it. Welcome back to Good Sports for You, where we are talking about good sports for you. And before we hop into it, I want to remind you to like, comment, subscribe, do all those things you need to do. I appreciate it so much. So to start off, we're going to talk a little bit about the games that have started this series off, game 1 and 2, and then we're going to hop into why this series is so important, how it's going to impact the game for decades to come, and how it's going to impact it for the immediate future. But like I said, we're going to hop into some game 1 and 2 recaps. So if you already know all about that, skip ahead. I'm going to leave a link to a timestamp in the comments. So if you already know all these things that happened in game 1 and 2, you can just skip ahead if you want to. We're going to talk about why this series is so important for all of baseball. So to start off, game 1 of the World Series was 11-4 Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays offense was clicking on all cylinders. They were able to get to Blake Snell early, which is something that a lot of teams have not been able to do all season long and all postseason long for sure. And the biggest blow to this Dodgers team was that Addison Barger pinch hit grand slam. That's the first pinch hit grand slam in the history of the World Series. So just absolutely incredible right away. But they were able to get into the bullpen, which is something that I noted in my World Series preview that is going to be extremely important for this Blue Jays team. Trey Savage did a good enough job pitching through 4 innings, did well enough. But the biggest thing that I want to highlight is that they were able to keep their bullpen fresh. They didn't have to use high leverage arms. They were able to pitch like Chris Bassett. Chris Bassett's a starter in all reality. So to have him be able to come in out of the bullpen because you already know that this game was handled was absolutely huge for this Blue Jays team. But it didn't matter too much because in game 2, Yamamoto for the Dodgers was as dominant as any pitcher that I'd ever seen. He was a little bit shaky early on, but he only got stronger as he continued to pitch. He pitched another complete game. This is his second complete game in this postseason, back-to-back complete games, actually, and he only allowed 1 run. Like I said, he was a little shaky early on, but he toughened up and just shredded through this potent Blue Jays offense. On the Blue Jays side of things, Kevin Gausman started off also a little bit shaky, but then he looked really strong. But a couple of big-time home runs by Will Smith and Max Muncy chased him out of the game as the Dodgers were able to take that one 5-1. So a couple of things that I want to note that are going to be key for these series early on, especially Shohei Ohtani isn't looking great, Freddie Freeman isn't looking great, and Mookie Betts isn't looking great either. None of those guys have really been able to produce a lot on offense. Shohei did have that home run, but outside of that, he's had pretty poor at-bats. His only other hit was a broken bat single, which isn't going to get the job done, and he honestly looked downright silly in some of those at-bats, similar to how he did with some of the at-bats with the Milwaukee Brewers earlier on in the postseason. But then between Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, they're a combined 2 for 13, which just isn't going to get the job done, quite frankly. But the thing is, when you look at that, you can either look at it one of two ways. You can say, wow, the Blue Jays are doing a great job keeping the Dodgers stars in check. Or you can look at it and you can say, wow, the Dodgers are tied in this series on the road. Now they're going back home for the next 3 games. And Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, and Shohei Ohtani, their top 3 players, haven't really been able to produce. So you're looking at that and you say, this Dodgers team isn't doing what they are capable of doing, and they still took a game on the road in the World Series. Personally, I'm a little bit more inclined to believe that because we know that these are Hall of Fame players that are gonna make a comeback. Shohei Ohtani, we were saying that earlier in the Brewers series, that he wasn't looking good at all, and then he rattled off 3 home runs and pitched 6 scoreless innings. Mookie Betts is a playoff performer. He's been here before. He knows how to get the job done. Freddie Freeman the exact same way. He had a grand slam in the World Series before. It's like these are the moments that these players live for, so do not expect them to stay down forever. On the pitching side of things, Yamamoto pitching the complete game was absolutely huge because it preserved a Dodgers bullpen. The Dodgers bullpen is not their strong suit. They already had to use it a good bit in game 1. So now that you got a guy who pitched a complete game, now you got your bullpen for game 3 completely rested and ready to go because in all honesty, you probably won't get another complete game. On the Blue Jays side of things, the offense obviously struggled against Yamamoto, but some key points that I want to note, Vlad Jr. has still looked extremely well. He's had some really quality at-bats. He's had a lot of hard hits, and he's hitting the ball well, obviously. Alejandro Kirk, he was kind of struggling for the beginning of this postseason, but he has totally picked it up in the World Series, and looks like he's performing at his best self. And in addition, the Blue Jays bullpen isn't too tired because Gausman was able to pitch well into Game 2. And because game one was a blowout, like I said before, they didn't have to use any high leverage arms. So there's a reason I said in the beginning of this video that this is the most important World Series of our lifetime. And those have two very specific reasons why. The first thing is these two baseball teams are playing a brand of baseball that we very rarely see anymore. And the second part is the collective bargaining agreement that's coming to an end in 2026. And so we're going to have to look a lot at salary caps and all those rules that are associated with that. So the first thing is the Blue Jays hit. That's all they do. They have a 294 average in the playoffs, and in the regular season, they hit 265, which was the best batting average of any team quite easily, and their strikeout percentage is absurdly low. They only have one player who ranks in the below the 65th percentile for strikeout percentage, and that is Addison Barger, and they are the only team that's even close to that, with only one player having a strikeout percentage that low. They're fifth in strikeouts this postseason with 76, despite having played the most games in the playoffs. They have like 50 less strikeouts than the Dodgers, which is just like incredible to think about. And the thing that I want to emphasize with that is this is different from what we have seen succeed in the past. What we have been told over this last decade or so is that you need to pay attention to the three true outcomes. And the three true outcomes are strikeouts, walks, and home runs. Basically, we've been told that a walk is as valuable as a single. We've been told that a strikeout is as valuable as a normal walk. Both those things, I'm here to say, are not true. I firmly disagree with it, because at the end of the day, if you're putting the ball in play and not striking out, you're putting pressure on the defense. You have to allow the defense to make a play, and if the defense isn't good enough, they're not going to make a play. It allows your runners to advance, something that a strikeout isn't going to do. And it's the exact same thing with a walk, which is what's frustrating. A single, a guy can go from first to third on a single. A guy cannot go from first to third on a walk. And putting the ball in play is just so astronomically important, because also when it comes to working a count, something that we have seen so much throughout this postseason has been so valuable. The reason that the Dodgers have been so successful is because their starting pitching has been able to go deep, because teams like the Brewers aren't willing to work counts against them. Foul balls off. You have guys like Ernie Clement. They're not striking out because they are putting the ball in play and they are fouling the ball off. You don't see that much anymore for teams in general. You look at a team like the Yankees. They have some of the best power hitting across the whole entire league. Well, guess what? As we've seen this year, power hitting may not equal playoff success. And a partial reason because of that is because of teams like the Dodgers. The Dodgers are willing to pitch their starting pitching so much, which is a big shift from what we've seen in the past. Yamamoto, like I said, he's thrown 2 complete games. This is the first complete game in a World Series since Johnny Cueto in 2015. He's the first pitcher to throw 2 complete games in the same playoffs since Madison Bumgarner in 2014. He's the first pitcher to pitch 7+ innings in the World Series since 2023, and he's the first pitcher to at least record an out in that 7th inning since 2019. Pitchers are not going deep into the game. And Dave Roberts, this season, incredibly, he said, you know what? I'm going to trust it. Because as we saw in the 2020 World Series when Blake Snell was pulled so early, because the analytics say that once you have the pitcher go through the lineup for a third time, like all the numbers drop dramatically. It doesn't matter if your pitcher is chucking the ball. Yamamoto was so much on his A game, it would have been terrible if they decided to pull him, because the Dodgers built a lineup and they built a team and a starting rotation that said, hey, we're paying our starting pitching so much so they can go out and win the game for us. You look at a team like the Brewers. I love my Brewers at the end of the day, but when it comes to pitching, in my opinion, they're not doing it right. They're saying, oh, it's the 4th inning. Freddie Peralta's looking a little shaky. Let's get a guy warmed up. Oh, it's the 5th inning. He's given up a couple of runs. He's got to go. Sometimes you need to keep those guys in at the end of the day, because your bullpen may not be good enough. The Dodgers are really showing that the starting rotation is just as valuable now as it has ever been. And you can't help but wonder how many more complete games or pitchers going long into the games could we have gotten if analytics weren't saying, nah, it's probably time to pull them instead of just looking at the eye test. Like I said, you have key examples from games in the past. The 2020 World Series, Blake Snell was pulled so early because that's what the analytics said to do. And the manager got absolutely crucified for it, in my opinion, rightfully so. And the thing is, the Blue Jays team has showed that you need to build a complete lineup. And so have the Dodgers, honestly, but they have so much money that they have a complete lineup. But you look at both of these teams and there are absolutely no holes. You have no freebies. And I think that's extremely important because, like I said, like you look at the Blue Jays, their 9-hole hitter you got to be scared of. You look at a team like the Brewers, you're not worried about their 7 through 9 hitters. Honestly, you look at a team like the Yankees, you have Anthony Volpe. Anthony Volpe hasn't done well. You look at some of these guys, like on the Phillies even, you get down to their 9, you're like, okay, that's a free out. The Dodgers don't have that. Andy Pages has really struggled in the playoffs. I will say that. But as a whole, he's not somebody that you can take lightly. This Blue Jays team, you don't have a single player that you can take lightly. So both of these teams are changing the game so much because whoever wins, you're going to look at it and you're going to say, this team is doing it differently than any other team is doing it right now. The Dodgers, you don't have any other team with the starting pitching talent that they do and willing to actually use the starting pitching to do their job and pitch deep into games. And with the Blue Jays, you don't have really anyone else saying, our job is to hit the ball and not strike out. That is it. We're not going for a home run every single swing. Like John Boy and Jake talked about it on their Talking Yanks after the Yankees lost, and they were like, the Yankees need to change because that's all they're doing is they're just trying to hit home runs. The Blue Jays are the exact opposite. You even see somebody like Vlad Jr. A lot of people would think, oh, he's a power hitter. He's going to strike out a lot. He's not striking out really at all. Even in the postseason, when he's facing really, really good pitching, he's making contact. He's hitting the ball hard. That's what I am asking teams to do is put the ball in play. And then on the pitching side of things, leave your starting pitching in. Even with the Blue Jays, we saw that with Gausman. Gausman, he still pitched deep into the game. I mean, honestly, a couple World Series ago, if somebody pitched 6 innings, you would have said, wow, that's a great game. But you look back at the 80s, there were complete games being thrown out left and right in the World Series. That is what you are paying your starters to do, so let them do their job. Okay, so now that we're done with that, we're going to talk about the collective bargaining agreement, which is arguably even more important for the sport as a whole. And the collective bargaining agreement is basically the rules that are come up with by the owners and the MLB and the players union and everything like that. And it has to deal with salaries. It has to deal with salary caps and all those things. I'm not going to act like I'm an expert, but the one thing that will be on the table is a salary cap for all teams. And a payroll cap, honestly, is what it is. On the one hand, you have owners saying, well, we need a payroll cap because teams like the Dodgers are paying their teams too much money. And small market teams, for example, like the Brewers or like Cincinnati, they can't compete. And then on the other hand, the players are basically saying ownership can spend more money, but they're not willing to do it. And so the reason that this playoffs is so important, because if the Dodgers win, that's just way more fuel for the ownership to say, we need a salary cap. Because the thing is, too, the Blue Jays also have a high payroll, which is not talked about enough. They are 5th on payroll. So if the Dodgers win, the owners can easily say, we have a team in the Blue Jays who is willing to spend. They spent so much money. They signed their star, Vlad Jr., to a huge contract, and they still lost. They couldn't get the job done against this team that has this enormous bankroll because they are so good. And then on the other side of things, you could have a team like if the Brewers made it, then there really wouldn't be an argument because then the players could say, well, hey, look, if the Brewers were able to do it, why can't you do it? Be investing more into your team and do all those things. And honestly, that's what it really boils down to. The Dodgers are willing to spend a lot more of their revenue percentage, and a lot of other teams aren't willing to do it. And I don't know everything there is to know about that, so I'm not going to get into that. But what I will say is that if the Dodgers win, all it's going to do is add fuel to the fire for the ownership to say we need a salary cap, we need to place a limit on it. And if the Blue Jays lose, it's a lot more fuel for the players to say, hey, look, other teams can still get it done. And I mean, you want to look at a team like the Mets. The Mets spent so much money on their team and they didn't even make the playoffs. So the players can very easily say, hey, you can still spend and not make it because your team just isn't good. And like those things happen. But at the end of the day, the ownership wants to say we want a salary cap so they can spend less money on the players and they can save more money and make more money and all those things. Just billionaires getting rich and then millionaires complaining about it at the end of the day. And another part that's so important about this is the deferred contracts. The Dodgers have literally $1 billion in deferred contracts. And other teams can do deferred contracts like they can, but the Dodgers have all the resources to say, we can put literally $1 billion to the side and say, we will pay it later, which is something that some teams just simply don't have the power to do. Like they can defer some money, but $1 billion for some teams is just simply too much. So like I said, if the Dodgers win, it's more fuel to say, hey, we need to change something up. The deferred money needs to change. A salary cap needs to be implemented. But if the Blue Jays win, it's just the players can very easily say, no, you just need to build a good team. You need to build a good coaching staff. So that's why it is so important, because honestly, there could be a lockdown very soon and a shutdown of all of baseball after the 2026 season, because that's when it's over. And especially if the Dodgers win this year, and if they also are really good, and if they win in 2026, if they have a three-peat, you can easily see the owners saying, we need to have a salary cap because the Dodgers are just too good. But I mean, we'll see what happens. But for those two reasons, one, these two teams are playing a different brand of baseball that we have seen with letting their starting pitching actually pitch and letting their hitters make contact and not strike out. That's changing the game. And then on the other hand, it is going to be the salary cap issue, and payroll and deferred contracts is another huge issue, which is why this World Series is the most important of our lifetime. But that's all I got for you for right now. Thank you for listening to me. I had a great time talking to you. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all those things, and I'm out. Peace.